Hey, welcome back to the classroom again. We are outside today. It is so nice out. It is warm. It is not cold like it was over the weekend. And we are enjoying the outdoors, and we're going to enjoy more of our book, The One and Only Ivan. H. I lay out 16 pieces of poster board. 4 down, 4 across. A perfect square. What are you up to, Bob demands. I'm guessing it doesn't involve sleep? It has to do with the billboard. That sign's a monstrosity, particularly since I'm not featured. I grab my bucket of red paint. You're not on the billboard because you're not in the show, I point out. Technically, I don't even live here, Bob says with a sniff. I am homeless by choice. I know. I'm just saying. I study the billboard, and I make 2 fat lines, like broom handles. Another fat line connects them. I stand back. What do you think? What is it? No, wait, let me guess. A ladder. No, not a ladder. I say a letter. At least I think that's what they're called. I have to make 3 more. Bob cuddles up next to Nottag. He asks, yawning, why? Because then I'll have a word. A very important word. I dip my fingers into the paint. What word? Home. Bob closes his eyes. That's not so important, he says quietly. Nervous. All day long I knuckle walk circles around my cage. I'm so nervous I can't nap. I can't even eat. Well, not that much anyway. I'm ready for the show. And I'm ready to show Julia what I've made. It has to be Julia. She's an artist. Surely she'll truly look at my painting. She won't notice the smudges and tears. She won't care if the pieces don't quite fit together. She'll see past all of that. Surely Julia will see what I've imagined. I watch Ruby trudge around sullenly through the 4 o'clock show, and I wonder, what'll happen if I fail? What if I can't make Julia understand? But of course I know the answer. Nothing. Nothing will happen. Ruby will remain the attraction at the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, conveniently located at off 595 with 2 shows of 2, 4, and 7. 365 days a year. Year after year after year. Showing Julia. It's time to show my work. The mall is silent except for Thelma the McCall, who is practicing a new phrase. Uh-oh! Julia is finishing her homework. George is sweeping outside, and Mac has gone home for the night. I grab Nottag and I carefully pull out the folded papers. So many paintings, page after page, piece after piece of my giant puzzle. I pound on my glass and Julia glances over. Fingers trembling, I hold up one of my paintings. It's brown and green, a corner piece. Julia smiles. I display another picture, and another, and another, and another. Each one a tiny part of the whole. Julia looks confused. But what is it? She asks. She shrugs. It doesn't matter. It's pretty just as it is. Uh-oh, says Thelma. No, it does matter. More paintings. George calls out to Julia. He's done for the night. Grab your backpack, he says, and hurry, it's late. Gotta go, Ivan, Julia says. Julia doesn't understand. I have to find the right pieces. I dig through the pile. They're here somewhere. I know they are. I find one. Another one. Another. I try to hold 4 of them up against the glass. Bob, I say, help me. Hurry. Bob grabs paintings with his teeth and drags them to me. One by one, I shove pictures through the window crack. They crumple and tear. There are too many pieces. My puzzle is too big. Careful, Ivan. Those might be worth millions someday. You never know. She arranges the paintings into a neat stack. I suppose Mac's going to want to sell these in a gift shop. She still doesn't understand. I shove more out the hole, and more and more and more. All of them, one after another. So Ivan's been painting, has he? George says as he puts on his coat. A lot, Julia says with a laugh. A whole lot. You're not taking all those home with you, are you? I mean, no offense to Ivan, but they're just blobs. Julia thumbs through the towering stack of paintings. They might not be blobs to Ivan. Let's leave them by the office. Mac will try to want to sell them, George suggests. Although, why would anyone want to pay $40 for a finger painting of a 2-year-old that a 2-year-old can do? I do not know. I like Ivan's work, Julia says. He puts his feelings into them. He puts his hair into them, George says. Julia waves goodbye. Good night, Ivan. Night, Bob. I press my nose against the glass and I watch her walk away. All of my work, all my planning, wasted. I look at Ruby, sleeping soundly, and I suddenly know she'll never leave the Big Top Mall. She'll be here forever, just like Stella. I can't let Ruby be another one and only. Chest beating. Often when visitors come to see me, they beat their hands against their puny chest, pretending to be like me. They pound away, soundless, as the wet wings of a new butterfly. The chest beating of a mad gorilla is not something you ever want to hear. Not even if you're wearing earplugs. Not even if you're 3 miles away wearing earplugs. A real chest beat sends a whole jungle running. As if the sky is broken open, as if men with guns are near. Angry. Thump. The sound, my sound, echoes through the mall. Julia and George spin around. Julia drops her backpack. George drops his keys. The pile of pictures goes flying. Thump, thump, thump. I bounce off the walls. I screech and bellow. I beat and beat and beat my chest. Bob hides under knot tag, his paws over his ears. I'm angry at last. I have someone to protect. Puzzle pieces. After a long while, I grow silent and I sit. It's hard work being angry. Julia looks at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. I'm panting. I'm a little out of shape. What the heck was that? George demands. Something is really wrong, Julia says. I've never seen Ivan act this way. He seems to be calming down, thank goodness, George says. Julia shakes her head. He's still upset, Dad. Look at his eyes. My pictures are scattered all over the floor, like huge autumn leaves. What a mess, George says, sighing. Wish I hadn't bothered sweeping tonight. Do you think Ivan's okay? Julie asks. Probably just a temper tantrum, George says. He reaches under his chair to retrieve a brown and red picture. Can't say I blame the guy, stuck in that tiny cage all these years. Julia starts to answer, but then she freezes. She cocks her head. She stares at her feet, where my pictures lie in disarray. Dad, she whispers, come see this. I'm sure he's another Rembrandt, George says. Let's pick these up and get going, Jules. I'm exhausted. Dad, she says again, seriously, look at this. George follows her gaze. I see blobs, many, many blobs, along the occasional swirl. Please, can we go home now? That's an H, Dad. Julia kneels down, straightening one picture and another. That's an H in here. She grabs more pictures. Put this one here. And I don't know, maybe that one? You have an E. George rubs his eyes. I hold my breath. Julia is running now. She picks up one picture, sets down another. It's like a puzzle, Dad. This is something. It's a word, maybe words, and a picture of something. A giant picture. Jules, George says, this is crazy. But he's looking at the floor too, wandering from picture to picture and scratching his head. H, Julia says. E, O. Ho? Julia chews her lower lips. H-E-O. And that looks a lot like an I? H-E-O-I. George writes in the air with his finger. I-E-O-H? Not the letter, an actual I. And that's a foot, or maybe a tree and a trunk? Dad, I think it's a trunk. Julia runs to my window. Ivan, what did you make? I stare back. I cross my arms. This is taking much longer than I thought it would. Humans, sometimes they make chimps look smart. Finally, George and Julia take all the pictures to the ring, where there's room to see them all. An hour passes as they try to assemble my puzzle. Ruby is awake now, and she and Bob and I watch. Ivan, Ruby says, is that a picture of me? Yes, I say proudly. Where am I supposed to be? That's a zoo, Ruby. See the walls and the grass and the people looking at you? Ruby squints. Who are all the other elephants? You haven't met any of them, I say. Yet. It's a very nice zoo, Ruby says with an approving nod. Bob nudges me with his cold nose. It is indeed. In the ring, Julia pumps her fist in the air. Yes! She cries. I told you, Dad. There it is. Home. Home. George gazes at the letters. He spins around to look at me. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jules. Once in a trillion kind of thing. Like that old saying about a chimp and the typewriter. Give him long enough and he'll write a novel. I make a grumbling noise, as if a chimp could write a letter, let alone a book. Then how do you explain the rest of it? Julia demands. The picture of Ruby in the zoo. How do you know it's a zoo? See the circle on the gate? There's a red giraffe in it. George squints and tilts his head. Are you sure that's a giraffe? I was thinking more along the lines of a deformed cat. It's the logo for the zoo, Dad. It's on all their signs. Explain that. George gives her a helpless smile. I can't begin to. I'm just saying there has to be a logical explanation. Look at how big this is. Julia puts this last piece of Ruby's right ear into place. It's huge. It's definitely large, George agrees. Julia watches me. She chews on her thumb now. I see the question in her eyes. She turns back to the paintings and stares at them. Looking, truly looking. A slow smile draws on Julia's face. Dad, I have an idea. A big idea. Julia races around the edge of my painting, her arms spread wide. Billboard big. I think this is meant to be on a billboard. That's what Ivan wants. George crosses his arms over his chest. What Ivan wants? He repeats loftily. And you know this because you two have been chatting? Because I'm an artist and he's an artist. Uh-huh, George says. Julia clasps her hand together. Come on, Dad, I'm begging you. No, I'm not doing that. No billboard, no way. George shakes his head. I'll get the ladder, Julia says. You get the glue. I know it's dark, but the billboard's lit. Mac will fire me, Jules. Julia considers. But think of the publicity, Dad. Everyone will know about Ruby. You want me to put up a sign that shows Ruby in a zoo with the word home on it in giant letters, George gestures towards one of my pictures. A sign, coincidentally, that just happens to be made by a gorilla? Exactly. And what do you want me to do all this without Mac's permission? George asks. Exactly. Nope, George says. No way. Julia goes to the edge of the ring, careful not to step on any of my paintings. She picks up Mac's claw stick. She walks back and hands it to her father. George runs a finger along the blade. She's just a baby, Dad. Don't you want to help her? But how would it help, Jules? Even if lots of people see Ivan's sign, it doesn't mean anything's going to change. I'm not exactly sure yet, Julia shakes her head. Maybe people will see the sign and they'll know this isn't where Ruby belongs. Maybe they'll want to help her too. George sighs. He looks at Ruby. She waves her trunk. It's a matter of principle, Dad. Princicipal. L-E, George corrects. Dad, Julia says softly. What if Ruby ends up like Stella? George looks at me, at Ruby, at Julia. He drops the claw stick. The ladder, he says. It's in the storage locker. So we're finally figuring out Ivan's plan. He has made his own painting in the form of a puzzle for Julia to put up on the billboard. So we'll see in our next couple, as we wind down. I believe we have 4 or 5 more readings together. And we'll see if Ivan can protect Ruby and get her out of there. Have a great day, guys. Try to spend some time outside. See you in the classroom next time.